All right. What's going on, everyone? All right. Welcome, welcome. We're just getting started here. I got my coffee. I got something cool today. So I've been reviewing a lot of portfolios. And by a lot of portfolios, I mean like I've probably reviewed like 40 portfolios in the last month. And I've been given a lot of feedback and I've been tweeting about it, and I've had some interest in just learning a little bit more about what makes a good portfolio. I know with a lot of layoffs and whatnot, there's a lot more people who are have unexpected searches for jobs. And so I wanted to help out a little bit, since I'm kind of on the opposite end of that, where I'm reviewing portfolios and helping making hiring decisions right now. I thought I would help some people out by doing some portfolio reviews. So I know it was a little last minute. Wasn't really expecting to do this when I first woke up this morning, but yeah, it's something that kind of dropped in my lap. So I have at least one portfolio that I'm going to review today. And then if anyone else wants your portfolio reviewed, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll take a look at it, and we'll kind of work through what we can improve, and things that you're doing well, things that you might want to consider, and yeah, we'll kind of take it from there. If we don't get a lot of portfolios today, which I don't expect to get a whole lot, with just kind of how last minute I did it, I'll just talk a little bit about what people look for in a portfolio. And I know we have at least a couple of senior designers in the chat as well. So yeah, if you want to weigh in as well about some of the things that you look for in hiring, I would love to have a conversation about that as well. So I'm going to spend a little time getting this all set up. I'm going to pull up this first portfolio here. Let's see. Let's move some stuff around. How's everyone doing on this fine Friday? Been a crazy week. Doing interviews is a lot of work, because like I've always, when I've done, been on the other side of doing interviews, I've always, there's always parts that are just really just awful about the experience. And so when I started interviewing people, I thought, what are the things that I really hated about the experience? What were the big questions that I had? And I tried to address those as best I could, but it really shows why like so many so many interviews suck, is because to do them right, you have to do a lot of prep work, like on the interviewer side. And I realized that was the root cause of a lot of things that I didn't like about interviews. There's a lot of interviews not doing anything to prepare. So yeah, I guess that shouldn't be surprising though. All right, let's see. So we got all right. So the first portfolio that we're reviewing today is by Dennis. So Dennis, let's pull up your portfolio. All right. So Dennis wanted a review on his portfolio. For context, he is looking at junior positions. Let me make sure I got that right. All right. All right. So entry-level junior, or entry-level / junior level is making a career change. So he's transitioning from some other work and transitioning into UX, wants to break into it, which I think is fantastic. A lot of people view it as like a detriment to swap careers, and I really think it's an asset for UX design. And the reason is that a lot of UX is about taking your understanding of the world and taking a lot of the research that you do into a space and being able to apply that to create better experiences for those people. And so you always have a bit of your life experience like baked into it. And there's so many things that you can learn from other industries and from other backgrounds and walks of life that you can apply to UX design. And so a key for designing a portfolio where you're transitioning in is to leverage the skills that you built in other areas, in other industries, and your background of skills and knowledge that you have, and figure out the ways that you could leverage it into UX design. So that's kind of the framework that we're kind of thinking through for Dennis, and that's kind of how we're gonna approach this. All right. Cool. So overall, like very clean look, which is like, especially for a UX design portfolio, you don't have to do anything that's like some crazy frills. I really am focused on things like your problem solving skills, your storytelling skills, and your ability to communicate. At a high level, I'll get into more details about exactly like kind of the things we're looking for. But overall, like we got that's kind of the big things that we're hitting on. And the other part for a UX portfolio that we're kind of looking for is I like to do a general heuristic analysis of just things of like, does your portfolio have basic usability? If things are not clickable, that look clickable, that's already a red flag. If you're not thinking about those things for your own portfolio, then especially when we're getting into like mid-senior level, it's pretty much inexcusable if like you're breaking basic usability on your portfolio. Let some of those things slide for like some of the juniors, designers, a little bit softer on that, just kind of take that in context, but that's something we're kind of looking for. All right, so Dennis, I'm a product designer, comic book connoisseur, and have a curious passion for the social constructs of society. It's a pretty good intro. I like that. Call to action is about me. Okay. We got some education here, Bachelor of Science in Architecture. Architects make some good designers, because there's a lot of principles that are kind of like we understand about architecture that can be applied to design. One way that I heard it described is that architecture is thinking about people possessing a physical space, where a lot of UX design can be summarized as people being inside a digital space. And so there's a lot of things that can carry over, things like the same way that you think about lobbies and hallways and like individual paths and execution and how people navigate a space. A lot of those things can be applied to a digital space as well. One of my favorite authors that I have gained a lot from is Christopher Alexander. He was actually an architect who wrote a lot in the mid-60s, 70s. I believe he's still publishing today. But a lot of the work that he did, he basically talked about design systems way back in the 60s and kind of applied that to architecture. So there is a lot of overlap between these industries. All right, so yeah, Associate of Arts, Art and Design. Okay, cool. And Real Estate Broker, Valet, Design Intern. Okay, let's take a look at some of the work. So we got some Find a Seat, SP, End of Shift form, and then we got contact. Overall, like the flow. I'd probably swap this a little bit. I want to know about your work. Like, that's the most important thing. I spend way more time looking at portfolio than I do a resume. Just because portfolio, I can actually see how you execute on your work versus a resume. It's kind of helpful up to a degree. So I would say like 80% of my time in any particular candidate is looking at their portfolio versus like 20%, if that, looking at the resume. All right, so let's dig into some of this work. All right, find a seat, work anywhere. Creating a remote work companion, taking past ideas and merging them into new uses, rethinking what is considered the office. Okay, I'm not going to read this all out loud. I'm just going to kind of read. So you got some introduction. All right, so it looks like this kind of project is a bit of spec work, I believe. It doesn't look like this is for a client. So I would just specify that, like, it's better to just say, like, this was a self-directed project. This was something that I did for a portfolio, rather than leaving the person guessing. It's totally normal and like totally fine to do these kinds of projects to build the portfolio that you want, or the portfolio that you just wouldn't be able to build otherwise. And so I would say that up front, that like you saw a need and that you wanted to design a solution around that. All right, challenge. I like that, and process as well. Cool. You got a typical like design, like UX process here, and then we got some research as well. Okay, so we got some research. We got some big questions. I like this because this shows some of your thinking and that you were being proactive about some of these ways to kind of think about this research. Okay, then we got some personas. Show that you went through ideating. I love that you did flows. This is kind of a, I guess, information architecture, not really a flow. It looked like a flow with arrows, but this is more of like a information architecture diagram. And we got some thumbnail sketches. Cool. Working through sketches. All right, then you get into wireframing. Okay, cool callouts. There's the flow. Yeah, I love that. Okay, and then you got into some prototyping as well. Cool. I like that not only you showed the screens, but then you actually kind of showed how they relate to each other. And you can kind of see like divergence and how things kind of like loop back to each other, where you go. This is, you know, I don't see this very often. I like this. I like this presentation. And then you got some like zoom in on things. Oh, you actually embedded the Figma. Oh, that's clever. I like that. All right, and so you got some conclusion as well. And then you got, you know, this layout, which is pretty cool. All right. Some feedback. So I would make sure that you include in your projects that whether it was for a client or not, or whether it was kind of a spec work, or this is just kind of a portfolio builder. Kind of wordy. I would reduce the amount of text that you have in some of these spaces. Wireframing. I know I didn't like really dig into it, but like, we're thinking about the way that someone is reviewing it. They're reviewing like a bunch of portfolios. And so we're not spending a whole lot of time as hiring managers on each individual one. We're just trying to get the gist of it. And so the more that you can do like some brief stuff, like I don't really necessarily need to understand, like I know what wireframing is. I don't need to know too much about it. You're just like, this is where I just, then I started wireframing. Definitely love the use of callouts. This is a really great way to kind of like make it more skimmable, so that people can get the gist of it as well. Yeah, I like this introduction as well, because you're really talking about like you're approaching it from this idea, which I think is very interesting. Another way that I like doing portfolio builder pieces, are some of the best, like kind of these spec portfolio pieces, is to approach a problem that you see. And so while this one is kind of approaching it from like an idea, the general idea is taking the idea of an office or shared office and turn it into a table reserve app. So this is the way that you would like work with a startup. But if this is just, it's fluid, it's up to you completely on what kind of project that you do. I would frame it a little bit more around, I have this problem, or I see this problem for this audience, and I wanted to design a solution for that problem. So that way your North Star, the thing that you're focusing around your problem, or your North Star, the thing that you're focusing the whole project around, is the problem. And so you're not really tied into a solution where you kind of jump directly into a solution and it's all about kind of like how you would build out and how you would develop that solution. I would approach it more like, this is a problem that I see. I did some research into the space to better understand the problem and kind of get more details about it. And then based off of the problem that I see, here's the solution that I shaped. And so I really like that kind of format. I know in the real world, you don't necessarily always get that because you're hired by a startup and they've already come up with an idea. But that's really kind of what I want to see from like a designer as well, is that their ability to really focus in, and every effort is about solving the problem, be problem focused, so that you can shape the solution around that. So yeah, the other piece that I really want to see, I mean, you probably get into it a little bit. Let me just skim this real quick. Yeah, I use this information to conduct persona mapping. Okay, so something that I don't see in a lot of portfolios, and that would really give you a leg up on a lot of candidates, is being able to articulate why you picked that method for solving the problem. So if I go back up here, you got your empathize, define, ideate, and prototype. If you think about those as kind of like your phases. Within the empathize, or kind of research phase of that, there's a lot of different methods that you can use in order to do research. You could do competitive space research, you could do personas, you can do user interviews, you could do diary studies. There's a lot of different options that you can do for research. And I think where a lot of designers fall short is they don't understand how or why you would use certain tools for certain jobs. You think about all these methods, you think about something like personas. Personas are essentially a tool. Think about a bunch of tools like in a tool bag. And so a persona is kind of like, think about it like a screwdriver. And so there's certain things that you can kind of do with a screwdriver, but then there's other jobs that it's really good at. Driving a screw. Jobs that it can kind of do fairly well. Drive in a nail. I've done it. A lot of people do it. You use the back of a hammer. Pry things open is like something that it also does pretty well. But there are things that it's really good at, and there are things that are like not so good at. And so what I want to know is, especially because this is a self-directed project, why did you pick that method? What strengths or weaknesses for that method did you take into consideration for picking that? Because I feel like a lot of designers kind of get caught into this UX process where like every project I do personas. Why? Why did you pick personas over a different project or a different method? Are there other projects where you picked, like, you didn't do personas? And so being able to say, like, I picked this tool because it's the best tool for the job, and being able to articulate why is super powerful. And so it's something that I really recommend, because there's many different ways that you could do research. And this applies to every kind of phase of it. After research is synthesis. I got a bunch of raw data. How do I make sense out of it? So I want to know, what did you do to make sense of out of it? Did you do affinity diagramming? Did you do, a design sprint? Did you do follow-up research in order to articulate a little bit more? There's a lot of different things that you could do for each one of those phases. So you think about research, synthesis, design or ideate, and then refinement as well. There's a big tool set that you can use as a UX designer, and so I want to see a little bit more about why you would pick one tool over another. Let's see, ideate. I love that you did this. I love that you took like photos of these. These are super, super great. It shows that you're like iterating fast over this. Another part of that is, a little bonus. I don't know, this doesn't always apply to every project, but even like just some kind of rejected ideas as well is also kind of interesting, because there's so much that can be learned about ideas that didn't work, as much as ideas that did. It also shows that like you do your due diligence. Something that I see as like a constant problem with junior designers is the tendency to go with their first good idea. I know I was certainly there. I had a really great mentor that I worked with, and she always encouraged me to explore further, like go further. I know you had a great idea, but let's see if you can find, like, just humor the process and explore it more. See if you can come up with anything else. And I kind of did it begrudgingly, and then realized, like, oh my gosh, there are better ideas. And so sometimes, like, it's showing that you have the ability to really cast a wide net and just generate a ton of ideas before you, this goes back into what I said in something a couple of streams ago, this idea of divergence, go super wide, generate a lot of ideas, and then converge, come back together and narrow it down and really pick the best solutions. Yeah, same thing. I mean, like, for example, when I talk about like why you pick certain methods, I think this is a great example as well. Just like, I almost never do wireframing anymore. And that's because wireframing is one of those things, it's a deliverable that is best for, in my opinion, is best for getting people to make decisions before you go too far down a rabbit hole. And so it's really just kind of a presentation, and it's like it's getting stakeholders on board. And so especially if you're kind of executing this by yourself, I know you're like showing that you could do the whole process and whatnot. And so, you could do wireframes. I know a lot of designers who still do wireframes in all of theirs, but you don't necessarily have to. And so, especially because you kind of went, no, I apologize. Ignore what I was going to say. So yeah, just like, what's the justification for spending the time on wireframes when you're going to just take it and do like high fidelity as well? With a lot of design systems and starter design systems that I use, I just kind of go into higher fidelity wireframes right away. And so wouldn't knock you as a hiring manager for doing that. Okay, as far as just kind of like some layout stuff, I know you're not really going for a UI position, but like you got some width issues. We got some like nice line width here and here, but then you kind of go wide, kind of seems randomly. So I would just kind of tighten this up, just kind of use like common, same width for some of these, just for consistency. I like that you can like break it out and go wider with the images, You don't have to like make that into the same column. I like that those break out, but like keep the text consistent. Let's see. Yeah, even like kind of like the layout that you did here. I'm also noticing like some of these colors that you did, like some of those gradients, they're kind of nice. It's a little blocky, a little bit. And so like I would consider, yeah, you don't necessarily have to do blocks for each one. I think your headers do a good job. I'm not really getting too much into UI design, but yeah, just kind of like a couple of little things. All right. That's that project. And then I believe this is not, okay. So this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the project, or at the beginning of the review. Things that look clickable that are not clickable. You got a really great example here. Do a coming soon message. Don't do a coming soon button that does nothing, because it just takes me to the page that I'm on right now. So yeah, I would remove that as well. You would just do like a little coming soon message. Other than that, let's see. We got the contact, about me. Cool. Product designer based in Portland. Awesome. Cool. I love this. I love that you got like a little bit of information just about yourself, just kind of what you're interested in. This is all great as well. I mean, it's short enough that I think you could put it on the homepage, honestly. I mean, like, I don't think you need, I think you could tighten it up just a little bit, and then you kind of put it under this kind of like, I don't know, kind of sub headline here. And then you could just kind of tighten this up. So that way you can go directly into like, hey, I'm Dennis, kind of like sub headline that kind of is about me, and then have like a little bit more information. And then I would jump into, you know, your work as well. And then I would talk a little bit. So I would flip these two. So I'd go my work and then education, experience, and then end with contact. So digging in a little bit into the education and experience part as well. Yeah, so the education I think is good. Experience, get some disagreements on this part, but I'm really of the mindset that I don't really have any interest in any experience that's not related to the job. And so being a real estate broker, I don't think is relevant. I don't think any of the, like, besides the design internship, I don't think is really relevant. I think this is even something that you can consider merging into the About Me section, where you could just kind of like talk a little bit about yourself, you talk a little bit about your experience, you touch lightly on some of your other interests, and then it's a link to your resume. I wouldn't get really much further into that. I mean, people who are reviewing your portfolio do not have a lot of time on their hands, and so it's really kind of skimming. And so the more that you can cut down on the amount of words while still communicating your core message about who you are, is a great way to go. So I would consider that as well. And then you got like download resume. Cool, it's just a PDF, easy peasy. And yeah, that's basically what I would change. Those are my recommendations for that. Oh, other like little things. Just very, very small details. A domain is great to have. So instead of like, you know, .squarespace or .pixpa or whatever, just buying your name as a domain is just really kind of easy way to kind of clean that up. Also, interviewers or like hiring managers have a lot of portfolios open in different tabs. And so your first name is just right here in the title. So I would do just your full name. You could do just like your full name dash like UX designer, product designer, something like that. That way, if I got like, a bunch of tabs open, I can, know who this is. So small little detail about that as well. Yeah. So as far as like breaking into this and kind of filling out your portfolio, when it comes to junior designers or people who are trying to break into UX as a field, spec work or just kind of these self-directed projects are pretty good. Like I covered, kind of belabored. Focus on solving a problem, whether it's a problem in a piece of software or a problem that you see just kind of in general, is a really good way to go. I would also consider, if you're outside of just product design, if you're interested in UX UI design, one of the best ways to build a portfolio and actual clients is to find nonprofits near you, nonprofits or small businesses, and offer to redesign their website for free. And so you don't necessarily have to build it, you don't have to launch it, but it is a really great way to have an actual organization and an actual client where you're taking real considerations and real feedback and designing a solution for them. And a lot of these nonprofits do not have the time, money, or energy in order to do a website, and so a lot of them would be thrilled to have someone offer to redo their website. So if there's anything that I would recommend for kind of building that out, nonprofit is a really good way to go. And yeah, that's basically it. Dennis, if you're listening right now, let me know if you have any questions, or anyone else, let me know if you have questions. And if anyone's watching that wants me to take a look at their portfolio, drop a link in the chat and I'll get into it. Cool. Thanks, Dennis, for submitting that. And let me know if you have questions. So yeah, like I said, if you have a portfolio you want me to review, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Just enjoy my afternoon coffee. While we're waiting, we could talk a little bit more about just portfolios in general, and just kind of the things that hiring managers often look for. So let me check some of these things as well. All right, doesn't look like it. Cool. Okay, so just some things in general that hiring managers are looking for. So the biggest areas that actually, like, I'm gonna pull up a tweet because I just talked about this on my profile, or on my Twitter account. But I've been reviewing a lot of applicants for kind of mid to senior level UX designer positions. And there's a few things that I kind of see as like problems that are pretty common. I would say the biggest thing that I see in a lot of portfolios is that people confuse the work that we do and the deliverables that we create as designers with the value that we provide. And I touched a little bit about this on Dennis's portfolio, but I think it's worth repeating, in that every deliverable that we create, its purpose is to serve some kind of value. And so I don't want to just necessarily see just the end result, the mock-up or the comp, because I can't tell what kind of problems that you solved. I don't understand what the problem space was. I don't know anything about like what your process was or any of your findings. I just see the end result. And the only thing that I can judge you on is your ability to do UI design, not UX. There's a little bit of UX that I can do, just kind of based off of, whether it looks like you have basic usability. And a lot of these, just because they're just photos of UIs that you did, I can't interact with them. I'm extremely limited in what I can do. And so really the thing that I judge you on when I'm reviewing your portfolio is how well you connect to the value that you are delivering. And so the best way to do that is to tell a story. And so just like if you've ever looked at how Pixar tells stories or have done like a basic writing class, there's that thing that you always learn about called the story arc. Basically, like, here's the context, there was some kind of conflict, there was some kind of hero's journey in order to resolve the conflict, the like solving of the problem, and the end result. So it follows this arc. And so I want to see that story arc in all of your projects, in all of your portfolio. I want to see that here was the context, here's the problem that I saw, here are the UX methods and my process in order to solve that and to develop a solution. Here's how I refine that solution, and then here's the end result. I want to see that whole arc. So just showing me photos like on Behance or Dribbble don't really give me the whole story. Unless you kind of hack those platforms and you do like text and images, they're really not built for a lot of that. So that's the biggest thing. And so I would say if you're going to get one takeaway from this, it would be look at your portfolio and ask yourself if you're telling a story with each part of your portfolio. So I want that problem set. I want to know the journey that you went through, even some of those wrong turns. Those are super interesting, and I love seeing those in portfolios as well. And then talking about how you land on your solution, and then I want to see the end result. So if I don't see all of those pieces, then yeah, I'm very limited in what I can do, and there's a good chance probably passing you for the role. Let's see, other things that are kind of looking for in a portfolio as well. There's this interesting conception. I think, a lot of these inspiration websites have kind of ruined us for like the expectations of what a designer portfolio should look like. Because you really see like the best of the best, and they're usually designers, almost exclusively like UI designers who have front-end development knowledge, and they're able to develop these crazy interactive portfolios. And I think those are unrealistic standard for sure, because in 99% of design roles, they don't expect you to have any coding knowledge. It's nice to have that. It's really beneficial. I've actually wrote an article on should designers learn how to code? And it is good to have kind of that context, but also I don't expect you to be a full-time developer, and I don't expect you to fully develop your website, your portfolio from scratch as well. And so it is perfectly fine for you to find some kind of template and to start with that, because especially as a UX or product designer, I want to see your method. I want to see your process. I don't care too much about the visuals and the aesthetics of your portfolio. At least that's kind of my take on it, as a mostly UX kind of focused, and where kind of the direction of a lot of product design is kind of headed. That a lot more companies are using design systems, and we're working within existing systems. And so, like, I don't necessarily need you to know a whole lot about UI design. And like, I also know that like using these no-code tools are super acceptable as well, and I highly recommend it. If you have no coding knowledge, learn something like Webflow, use one of these website builders, and use these templates, because I will go for someone who is using a template and tells a good story over someone who has great aesthetics and only shows me their deliverables 10 times out of 10. And so focus on the story and your process over the aesthetics. You don't have to code your own website. So for anyone who's joining me right now, I'm reviewing portfolios. I just reviewed one, and then I've just kind of been talking a little bit about what I look for in a portfolio and some of the things to hit on. If you would like your portfolio reviewed, feel free to drop it in the chat. I know it's an act of bravery to kind of like put yourself out there. I promise I'm nice. And so, yeah, if you want to get some feedback on the work that you have, yeah, feel free to share. Other than that, feel free to ask me any questions that you have about freelancing or getting a job. I could probably wouldn't be able to help you too much about like actually like going through the interview process and whatnot, just because I've been freelancing for 8 years. So I haven't applied to a job in a hot minute. But a lot of the things when it comes to building a portfolio for freelancing and building a portfolio for a job, pretty much the exact same thing. Cool. So another thing that I don't see in a whole lot of portfolios, but I really appreciate, is to have some kind of content, like blog posts or videos or other kind of things like that kind of shows your thinking. And the reason why is that so much of UX design kind of happens behind the scenes. It's a little bit kind of below the surface. And there are certain things that it's even difficult to kind of capture properly in a portfolio piece. And so a really good way to show your expertise, especially kind of in these beginning years, or like as you're starting off as like a junior or beginner, is to show the things that you've learned, and to show the things that you're learning. And so I love seeing blog posts because that shows your thinking. Not only does it show your thinking, it shows that you've thought deeply about a particular subject. It shows that you have communication skills, which is super critical, even more critical, I think, than it's been at any other time, because there's so much remote working and because there's so much of your day that is captured asynchronously, meaning that you are writing something or capturing something, and then someone is, getting that communication later. And so writing and being able to articulate your thoughts and be able to communicate effectively has never been more important in the design community, design industry. And so by showing a blog post, you've shown your expertise or some kind of deeper thinking into a particular subject. And 2, it shows me that you know how to communicate and articulate an idea, especially in UX, because so much of what we do is like very abstract. And so being able to distill and articulate that is very helpful. So a couple of examples of that, for some of the more experienced designers who have like done work, in a lot of projects, you've probably gone through a phase where you were curious about a particular way to solve a design problem. So think of something like a login page. It's kind of my go-to for a lot of things. And so you could be designing a login page and you think, what is the best way to do third-party logins? I'm on a project and they want to do like third-party logins, like login with Twitter, login with Google. What's the best way to do that? And so this is a pretty common thing that you would go and you would search for inspiration. You would look at how other people are doing. And you might look at some blog posts and kind of understand like, what are best practices about this? What are some kind of things to avoid? What are some kind of common pitfalls? And if you're anything like me, you've probably found that there isn't one resource that has solved or answered all of your questions or addressed everything that you were looking for. And so usually it's kind of an amalgamation of different resources, different blog posts and different videos. And so we often will do a lot of this research as designers to kind of dig into a particular pattern or a different way to solve it. And then we design the interface that we're stuck on. And then we take all that research and we just close all those tabs and throw it away. And so the next time that happens, I encourage you to take that, save it, and distill it down and write it into a blog post. Because some of the most beneficial pieces of content that I have on my website and in the things that have led to the most business for me as a freelancer was not my portfolio pieces. It was my blog posts. It was blog posts that I dove deep into a subject like, what was it? Why is there a 2-page login? Like, why are places like Google doing the email field on the first page and the password field on the second page? Why are they doing that? So I dove into that because I was doing that research for a project and I was trying to understand why people use that pattern, what are the benefits and what are the drawbacks. And so all I did was just, after I finished that project, I kind of saved everything that I had, took some notes on it, and then I just wrote a blog post on kind of those things that I learned. And it doesn't have to be like a big thing like that as well. It could be something small. So for example, I'm working on a post / tweet storm. I don't know what format it's going to take, but I had this like really small design problem. And it was basically, I was taking a table, I was designing a data table. And in one particular column, the text was super long. It was like over 80 characters. It was crazy long. Like minimum 80 characters. Like it got way longer than that. And so it was a really unique kind of design problem of how do I design for a table column that was maybe like 100 pixels wide, 120 pixels wide, and it fit that many characters. And so I think that was kind of an interesting thing because we actually came up with a unique solution, because it turns out for that particular problem, typically how people truncate that is to do like the 3 ellipses down, or the ellipses is 3 dots, at the end of the string, the end of the text string. But there was a problem with this. In this particular case, the beginning of the string, it was super generic. It was the end that had all the unique information, and it actually made it identifiable. And so that kind of became an interesting thing. I'm like, okay, typical truncation doesn't necessarily work. What about some other solutions? So we came up with all these different solutions of like, could we parse it in code? Turns out it wasn't predictable enough to do that. What about truncating from the middle, where you have a little bit at the beginning, ellipses, a little bit of text at the end? That was kind of interesting. But we did some beta testing. We found out that it was actually only the end of the string that was useful. And so we actually did reverse truncation, where we did ellipses, then the end of the string. So ellipses in the front end of the string. And so like we had done all of these iterations and research and exploration, And if you're like, 99% of designers, you're just like, cool, solve the problem, you close all the tabs and you forget about it. And maybe it's a funny story that you tell like other designers about like a unique thing. But most of the time we just kind of forget about it and we never do anything with it. I'd encourage you to capture that stuff. Write a blog post, do a little tweet, do like a little like kind of a learning or a tip or something like that. Something that shows me that you've dug deep into a particular design problem, came up with a bunch of different solutions and landed on an ideal one in some of your learnings. That will show so much to recruiters, so much to hiring managers about what you know about design and the fact that you can understand a problem, look at a bunch of solutions, pick the best one, what the pros and cons, and what you learned from that. So it's something I highly recommend you do. You don't have to do any of the crazy stuff about like, you don't have to be on a blogging schedule, you don't have to post every week, any of this stuff. A lot of my blog posts were like, I was doing, 2 a year, maybe. And so it doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to show that you know what you're talking about. That's really it. All right. I don't think we're going to get another portfolio to review. But in case you're joining me now, just talking about portfolios and reviewing some portfolios. So if you're feeling brave and you want someone to give you some honest feedback on your portfolio, feel free to drop it in the chat and I'll take a look and give you some feedback on it. Not necessarily, you don't have to be a senior designer or have things together. Even if you just want to break into design and, you're just starting to put things together. Could help you out, give you some feedback. And feel free to ask any questions as well. If not, coming up to the 1 hour mark. I usually wrap up around 1 hour. So, if we don't get anything else, then I'm probably just going to wrap up in a little bit. And for anyone who's watching, the recording as well, let me know if you've, let me know if you like it. And let me know if you want your portfolio reviewed as well. Might make this a regular thing. I might do this as part of the stream as well. I think we're over portfolio reviews. I don't have any more to review. Coming up to the hour. So thank you so much for everyone who dropped in and hung out. I hope you learned something. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or leave them in the messages under the video. I hope you have a great day. See you next week.